what I said is I was not, this is not exactly the Japanese way of talking. But this is Manila, and this is the Philippines. And because of this light and the energy and your energy and the sound quality pushed me to behave as the Filipinos. So allow me to do this. This is not real me, but this is Yasu Ota in Manila, right? So we are talking about digital economy today. And I think this is very important to think about, even deeper than usual. Because we have extinguished panelists today from all over the ASEAN and Japan, and they have their expertise and they have insight. By sharing their view and experience, we can have better understanding what we are facing in this region. How should I start? I'm interested in hearing from Nick first, because your company has just listed in NASDAQ a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago on the NYSE.
2 weeks ago. Would you please introduce yourself and what your company does and what is your target might be?
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon to everybody in the audience. It is so exciting to be back here in Manila. Thank you very much. Manila is so special for me personally, not just because we have a very large business here in games and e-commerce and now payments, but two of our most beloved shareholders are families from Manila, Tessie C from the SM Group, and Lance Gokongwei and Mr. James from JG Summit. Every day we look up to them as role models and we try to act in the same way they would to build their businesses. Really honored to be in their home city here chatting with all of you. Our company C has grown from a very humble beginning in 2009 in a small shop house in Singapore. Today we employ almost 6,000 people across what we call Greater Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia truly is greater. It's really moving and so dynamic. And we operate in 3 lines of business. We are the largest video game and esports company in all of Greater Southeast Asia, 2 times as big as anyone else in that business. We are now the largest e-commerce marketplace in Greater Southeast Asia, 2.2 times larger than anybody else in e-commerce by orders. And finally, we're the largest fintech company. We do 1.9 times the e-wallet volume of anybody else in the industry. And that's happened in a very patient, deliberate, careful way over the years. And it's only happened because of our strategy of empowering small entrepreneurs across the region. Our approach is all about driving true entrepreneurship, which for us doesn't mean venture capital and IPOs. It really means small businesses in every community, in every little small village in the Philippines to Indonesia to Thailand. And what we're most proud of in our business isn't the fact that we have about 70 million people playing games or millions of people processing payments. It's that we have 1.6 million small businesses that are selling on our e-commerce platform. That gives us so much joy to be able to give them an opportunity to build a business. So to sum up, we're so excited about what the future holds for Southeast Asia and especially the Philippines. This is going to be a digital future, and it's going to be a future where livelihoods are going to rise because of what technology brings to small businesses.
Thank you, Nick. Well, actually, my impression to live in Singapore is ASEAN have a great advantage compared with the other so-called advanced nations such as the US and the EU and Japan. Because in my country, everybody has a bank accounts, more than 2, 3, right? And they have more than 4 or 5 credit cards. And they are tied up with them. They have to link with them. So they can, it's so convenient. So you don't really need to move on to the mobile transaction, mobile banking. But you are talking about the nature of the people of ASEAN, and you see the market there. Is that what you're from the US originally, right? But
yes.
What is the uniqueness of ASEAN?
So ASEAN for us is unique globally on 3 key dimensions. Number 1, I would say that the degree of optimism is actually higher here than almost every other part of the world I've seen. In fact, many in the room and certainly at this table are part of the YPO network. And every quarter, YPO does a global study of optimism around the world. The increase in optimism year over year in places like Vietnam and Indonesia was the highest worldwide just in this most recent quarter. So number 1, a great sense of optimism for the future. Number 2, ASEAN is young. Half of our population is under the age of 30, which means when they think of the internet, they don't even think about the web browser. They think about Instagram or Shopee or video games. They're migrating directly to smartphone. And finally, what gives me so much optimism is that ASEAN is good at solving problems. As our moderator pointed out, more than half of our population here in Southeast Asia doesn't even have a checking account, let alone a credit card, let alone be an LP in a private equity firm. These are meat and potatoes problems to be solved. And what we love about it is ASEAN's good at solving those problems. In our little business, we have 180,000 little counters around the region. We call it the auntie net. These are little aunties that take money from people and let them pay for their bills. And in many sorts of ways like that, ASEAN is able to solve problems through rural entrepreneurship that would take other countries decades to fix.
Sounds good. Well, okay, let me move on to Mr. Peng, because you have a very outstanding, phenomenal theory to analyze, to depicting this, what's going on in ASEAN in digital economy. Would you introduce yourself and you a little bit touched on your theory?
Well, I started my business 1989, and so we really can't call it digital economy. At that time, there was no digital economy, but I would rather call it techno economy. Let me try to justify that. If you look at economy, actually there are 6 components, and it started from around long ago until 1600. Before Newton's law, you have demand and supply, and actually during Columbus' time, the so-called capital start to appear. And there was only 3 components, which was very obvious: demand, supply, and capital. Then one day in 1687, Newton published the Principia, and we move on to the first industrial revolution, which was 1740. Then we suddenly have a new term called technology. In fact, the word technology was invented in 1860, and that was the reason why the School of Higher Learning, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, was built 1 year later. So now we have 4 components. But as we move on, suddenly you have Maxwell equation. And Maxwell equation in 1861 led to a variation of choices. And the new choices, of course, is dictated by purposes. And suddenly now we have altogether 6 components: purposes, choices, and demand, supply, and technology. And if I leave out one of them, I already said that. And the total thing is actually called market. Now, so if you look at it, actually nothing has changed since 1740, when technology was introduced. And actually, you can't really get Newton's law out of the equation. If you were to look at so-called driverless car, is it possible to take out all the mechanical parts in the driverless car and just get a laser radar sensing everything? What is the use of laser radar sensing everything when the physical car is not there? It is still Newton's law. Now, if you talk about mobility payments, now without Maxwell's law, you're not going to have a mobile phone. Now, what is the use of payment without a mobile phone or a card, which would be Newton's law? And shockingly, if you look at that, you realize that the last 300-400 years, that our society changes based on 3 equations. There was Newton's law, Maxwell's law, and the quantum physics. Now, so that leads to a very interesting question. That we have so many choices. We call it digital economy, we call it disruptions, we call it the period of uncertainty, we call it the unintended consequences. We call it rationality versus irrationality, and so on and so forth. But actually, what happened? It just because we have something called purposive and choice model of economy, and could that all be put into one equation? The answer is yes. And it was accidentally found in 1941 by Sonder McLean and Samuel Allenberg. I worked on it, and when I worked on it, actually everyone thought that I was not. And I set up my own company, and that's called Silverlake Group. Well, we actually crossed the unicorn line very early. But at that time, the word unicorn was not invented. And so I couldn't be a unicorn because now I'm too old. It's a very interesting phenomenon. So what are we doing now? First, the fact that there is supply, and actually shockingly, supply model in economy was wrong. Because if you do not believe in single principle, you actually cannot have supply. It sounds very complicated. I will translate it into a bit more easier way. And if you don't believe in God, you actually cannot have supply. The truth is, iron is from nature, zinc is from nature, oil is from nature, hydroelectric power is from nature. Where it come from? It comes from single principle. It works based on one single principle. Now, if that is true, then banking can be working on one single principle, and that is group theory, and I built that. It crossed the unicorn line. And of course, if you know what is the model, you would actually drive the second model, which is what today people call fintech. We started fintech at least 20 years ago. And next year, we will be listing our fintech group in Hong Kong. Now, that should be a unicorn by itself. And what about the next? Well, we talk about cloud computing, we talk about various form of new provisions and new supply model in this world. We are doing that. And that is private, is still not listed. And the last part, what about demand? What about demand model? I think demand model is largely about robotics. The response to the immediate demand is about robotics, it's about artificial intelligence. And we have that, and we are doing a generic artificial intelligence and robotic researches. So as a whole, we actually cover all the aspects of economy. And that was the reason why I called it techno-economy. Now, how it can help ASEAN? ASEAN is at different stages of development. Not single country no two countries has the same model. We started in ASEAN very early. In fact, I started in Indonesia. About 60% of the transactions in Indonesia go through my system. If I were to charge based on transactions, today, actually, Silverlake could be as big as Alibaba. But we charge licenses, we charge services. Maybe the economic model was wrong. But I think the customer is happy, we are happy, and that to me is fine. And when you go look at Philippines, it's actually more vibrant and looking at fintechs, well, it's a different model. So I think instead of just looking at digital alone, it is very important to look at it as a techno-economical evolution, and people call it fourth industrial revolution. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's a really clear-cut theory. We are used to the idea of demand and supply and capital, but in addition to those three elements, you're talking about the purpose and the choice which actively we can choose and we can set. Richard, I want to hear from you. I'm sorry I betrayed you. We had a preparatory session yesterday, and we had a dinner together with Richard, and I promised to him not to wear a tie, right? Because we are talking about the entrepreneurship today. So you were the minority. You was the only person who doesn't wear the tie, right? And then Richard told me because the description in your kit, the brochure, says simply business attire, right? So it depends on the definition of the business attire. And for him, he goes down to the layman, ordinary people's life. And from the bottom, he started thinking, what is the choice? What is the purpose of business? Would you please explain what you're doing? What is your viewpoint to look at this digital economy?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Eldridge. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lenndo. I've had the pleasure of living in the Philippines since 2001. And it was whilst I was living here that I stumbled across what became a massive opportunity to help change the world. I was running a company at the time, and over 50% of my employees would come to me and ask me for a loan as an employer because they weren't being served with a full range of financial services from a traditional financial institution such as a bank. And it made me think, why? Why can hardworking, well-educated people who were working for me not able to get the same chance in life that I got when I was growing up? So I took a year out of the business and I traveled to many developing countries around the world. And I found the same thing. In fact, at the end of the travels, I had identified, I believe there was over 2 billion people and 200 million micro and small enterprises around the world that are not able to get a full range of financial services that they need to empower themselves, to grow, and to actually generate more income in the world. So I started looking deeper. I went to speak to the financial services companies and asked them why. Why can't you serve these people? There is a huge demand and people want service. And they came back with the two same pieces of information. The first is, I don't have enough information about them. And the second is, I don't have technology that would allow me to serve them at a price point which economically works for me. I then went back to the end individuals, the 2 billion people who are, most of them under 30, and I found they all had something in common. Yeah? They all were completely connected to the digital economy. They typically all had a mobile phone, which today is a smartphone. They all use the internet. They all have social media. They all have email accounts. Yeah? They all use the internet. And the question was, well, why can't you invite them to use some of their information to get access to financial services? Share that information through proprietary algorithms to get financial institutions to know more about their customers and allow them to say yes to more people. Yes, you can have a savings product. Yes, you can have a line of credit. So today, we now operate in over 20 countries around the world. In ASEAN, we already work in Indonesia, Philippines. We're entering Thailand, Vietnam right now. And the same problem exists. We have generated the world's leading credit scoring and identity verification solution using people's access to their personal data sets with their permission that we use, and then we provide that information to the financial institution so it can make a better decision and grant access to these people. So typically these could be business loans, emergency loans for education, for health, to help with death in the family, etc. And as we move forward in the future, we see huge opportunities to expand that to insurance products, etc. as well.
So you were talking about the people who doesn't have access to the bank by themselves. In other words, you are helping the people indirectly through banking system. Is it fair to say that?
100%, yeah. I mean, our vision, which we all rally behind, it's the core of what we do as a business, and I think as an entrepreneur, it's very important to rally behind a bigger goal, is to allow 1 billion people around the world to use their data to get access to cheaper, faster, and more convenient financial services. So yeah, we work for the end consumer, but we do that using the financial institution as the intermediary.
The reason why you started the business in ASEAN is from my understanding, it's because there's so many bunch of people who doesn't have a bank account. In a sense, banking system is underdeveloped, and it became advantageous things of ASEAN. Should I say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at most developing economies within ASEAN, they face similar problems, yeah? Slowly, people are starting to get some form of banking relationship, let's say. It could be with a telco who has a mobile wallet. It could be through a traditional financial institution. It could be through an MFI. They use and have some touch point with a financial system. The challenge then is that how do you, on top of that, give them a full range of financial services? To be fully included and have the maximum opportunities in life, they typically need financial education. They need savings and investment. They need insurance. Yeah, they need access to credit, and they need to be able to transfer money. How do you do that in economic ways that make sense for the end user, whether it's a micro, small business or an individual?
Oh, sounds interesting. So for those who are working with the banking industry here, don't be offended. This is a new trend, so think about how to use him, right? Manny-san, Mr. Manny, you are from the major firms rather than entrepreneur. I think you are from the giant. And from your point of view, and you handle the telecommunication and traffic and everything, and how do you look at the digital economy emerging in this region? You've been in this business for a long time, and you have observed the changes in for the last 20 years. But to me, it seems to be accelerating. And the point, when it comes to the point where we should discuss the relation between startups such as them and major firms, traditional firms, and I still have a confusion how they can cope with each other. I'm just wondering what is your idea of it?
Well, that's a tough one. But we do know that the digital world is here upon us. And I think there are quite a number of issues in respect of how we develop the internet within the Philippines and much more within ASEAN. No? But the whole point about all of this digital pivot, especially from the telco side, is that we have to do it. We have no choice. If we don't do it, some others will do it for us. But as well, ultimately, it depends on, the objective is to make people's lives easier to do. We're a telco. Internet cannot thrive in any particular environment without the proper infrastructure being laid out, be it fixed line or mobile. No? And that is what we've been trying to do this past few years. If there's a Q&A, you could ask me about the challenges of slow internet speeds in this country, both on fixed and on mobile. But PLDT itself has gone into the internet space, I'd say 8 or 9 years ago, when we established Idea Space, which is essentially an incubator. So far, mildly successful, but I think we're trying to cultivate consciousness amongst our young people to become entrepreneurs in the digital space. And at about 6 years ago, we established Voyager, which is really our digital company and a disruptor in technology. You know? Basically, how we see the landscape here is fintech, financial technology, market technology, and e-commerce. To the points raised earlier on the let me deal with the financial side. No? As you know, there are two parts to the financial world. One is the people and institutions who provide the money, government, corporations, NGOs, and employers as such, all right? And then the other part is the people and the institutions who spend the money. We're on both sides of the equation. On the lending or provisioning of funds, we have platforms that enable banks and governments to lend out the money. For example, we're the largest, our platform gives the government the largest reach in terms of its conditional cash transfers. We disperse about 16 billion pesos of conditional cash transfers to various families in the Philippines digitally. No? And as well as provide salary loans and other forms of commercial loans. the difference in the Philippines, and I think the similarity for most countries in ASEAN, is that 70% of our people don't have a bank account or don't have a credit card. So that if you give them a PayMaya or a credit card or a debit card to use, to a farmer, for example, the first question he'd ask is, what do I do with this plastic? So part of the challenge of ASEAN as a community and within each country is precisely to inculcate that consciousness and the practice of using digital methods. And part of it is not only the infrastructure, but the device and the consciousness and the utility of using digital methods of payment and receipt of funds digitally. Now, PayMaya is on the other side, on the payment side, because that's also very important because it saves a lot of money, it is more efficient, and it allows banks in this heading of financial inclusion, which I think the current governor is very, very hot on, and which is correct. It allows banks to lend money to anybody in the Philippines, anywhere, if certain conditions are met. Number one, the lending institution must have the appropriate back-end platforms. They must have the credit rating engines as well. But think of what it can do to extend credit to anybody, anywhere in the Philippines. It obviates the need for bricks and mortars, and it builds the database from which fast-moving consumer goods can sell goods as well. No? So that's how we see PLDT moving into that space, providing not only infra, but well as the platforms needed for this digital economy to prosper. Technically, actually, anybody can, the internet is an open architecture, right? People in Indonesia can buy goods from the Philippines. The challenge is, people there earn in rupiah, and the seller of the goods must get paid in pesos. So you have a currency frontier that you have to cross, and the platform must enable you to be able to convert rupiah to pesos, and that will have to be the US dollars. And of course, the second challenge with that is the logistics part of it. And the third challenge is getting more and more people, 500 million people in ASEAN, to really adopt the digital mindset and be able to do and transact on the net as very few people now are doing so. No?
Thank you very much. So you have to, I understand that you have to set the specific direction when it comes to the investment and the way you place the capital. And once you have this clear strategy, then you can go and gather the necessary resources around you. Okay, Sato-san, thank you very much for your outfit. She is only a panelist from academic sectors, and she's a researcher, but she's working for the quasi-governmental organization called the Editorial. And I'm asking you, what is the role of the government? And we are talking about the entrepreneurship, which comes mainly from the young generation and individual and small startups. And it's always faced a difficult task in regulatory issue and the reforming of the structure of industry, which heavily the government has to be involved in. So is there anything that you can do, JETRO, for example, between the public sector and the regulatory governmental bodies? What is your idea to boost the entrepreneurship? What is the role of the government?
Okay, thank you, moderator. Ota-san? Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. Very good afternoon. I'm Yuri Sato, Executive Vice President of JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. This is a governmental organization of Japan to promote trade and investment between Japan and rest of the world. Yeah, as Ota-san said, I am only a speaker from the public sector, So I would like to think about the role of the government in promoting digital economy, which can contribute to making the ASEAN society more inclusive, because the digital economy help MSMEs to enter the more wider business platform. But I'm here today not only as the representative JETRO, but also representative AJIN, ASEAN-Japan Innovation Network. AJIN comprises private and public business organizations from ASEAN and Japan, including ASEAN-BAC, ASEAN Business Advisory Council, ABC, ASEAN Business Club, JCCI, Japan Chamber of Commerce Industry, JETRO, and so on. AJIN just started April this year, and the purpose is to promote the collaborative, innovative business between ASEAN and Japan. And the main activities is conducting business matching event and supporting startup, collaborating between ASEAN and Japan, and also providing policy recommendation, convey the private voice to the ASEAN governments. And just in this summit, AJIN held the ASEAN-Japan Fair in another room, maybe the 3 minutes walk from here, as a side event of this event. And 16 startups and very innovative pilot project opened the exhibit booth and making pitch events. And they were very, very interesting, exciting pilot project. JETRO screens ideas and applicants from all over the ASEAN and Japan, and select some pilot project and financially support the testing business for 1 and 2 years or so. That is our one of our bridging or supporting the role of the government. And more than 120 participants came to the ASEAN-Japan Fair only yesterday, one day. So I think the business networking between ASEAN and Japan and other countries is successfully done. And regarding the digital economy or e-commerce in ASEAN, could I briefly introduce the result of our study? This is a little bit Japanese way, so sorry about that. And JETRO had conducted a survey about e-commerce in Asia. And this result was already submitted to ASEAN-Japan Economic Ministers meeting in September this year. And we conducted this survey in collaboration with East Asian Business Council, EABC, and Japan Chamber of Commerce in Japan, and collected more than 350 respondents from ASEAN plus 6 countries, that is RCEP member countries. The first finding is that the human resources are the most crucial bottleneck in utilizing e-commerce for these 350 companies, as shown in this chart. This includes insufficient in-house capable staffs and low awareness of management level on digital economy. The second finding is that logistics and custom procedures are the second bottleneck, or the most important bottleneck, crucial bottleneck specifically for MSMEs. This is very traditional issue, custom procedure and logistics. Black line in this chart refers to large enterprises. Blue line refers to MSMEs in the ASEAN plus 6 countries, including Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, Korea, India. And red color shows ASEAN as MSMEs. So for ASEAN MSMEs, improving logistics and customs service is still very important issues and indispensable in order to utilize cross-border e-commerce, because ASEAN MSME is still focusing on domestic e-commerce business. So for the cross-border e-commerce business, this point is very crucial. And we already made some points for policy recommendations. Regarding human resources, management level awareness on the importance of the digital economy, especially MSMEs, managerial level, is very crucial. So managerial human resource development is very important. And also, e-commerce related legal guidelines development would greatly affect MSMEs' decision-making for them in diving into the digital business, given that ASEAN digital market is still relatively small and spatially scattered. And regarding to custom procedure and logistics, for the sake of ASEAN MSMEs development, further business facilitation measures should be taken, including prompt and more simple custom procedures, region-wide digital free zone, non-resident inventory system would be very important. These are some of our findings related to the digital economy. So like this, conducting relevant and timely research is also one of the government role, I think, as a public organization like JETRO. And JETRO very much ready to go forward such research on digital economy in the context of the improving the business climate for the MSMEs. And that could contribute to make ASEAN social economic development further, I believe. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. That is, thank you for sharing the view from Japan. And, as a person from Japan myself, I feel free to be in ASEAN. Manny, this is a paradise for me because everything's so new. So when I was in Tokyo, I feel like I'm tied up with my legacy, banks, internet, company, and everything is behind me. But here, individuals and startups like you can be very active. And there's a talent. It's like a magnet. This is a playing field where you can be really violent and very active. So this is the charm of ASEAN, and this is my observation as a Japanese journalist. That's why, please take a look at we have the exhibition of our publication, and outside of the Nikkei Asian Review, we are trying to get out of Japan and to be in Asia because there's a market, there's the demand, there's choice and the purpose. Okay, Manny-san, would you sum up if you have any comment to summarize the ASEAN digital economy? Because you was the most senior person, I think, among the panelists.
Probably the most criticized as well. Paradise, yeah. Just reminds me of on my way back from Geneva yesterday, I arrived yesterday to catch up on Joey's events here. Financial Times ran this rather large article on the hacking of the legal documents of Appleby, a law firm in Bermuda. So that has led to, they call it the Paradise Papers, because they identified certain companies and names who have certain offshore accounts. But that's another subject matter. I think what the lady said about human resources and customs and logistical barriers are true, but I think the ASEAN as an internet community will evolve only after certain component members themselves, by themselves, develop that internet practice and consciousness. And how do we do that? The first prerequisite is, as you know, is the appropriate infrastructure. Internet by itself cannot exist without an infra, without the highways, without the delivery system. And related to that is that the devices must be there. The smart devices must be there. The ability for the device to connect to the internet. At the moment, only about 40% of our people have smart or smart-like phones. That's in the case of the Philippines. And I think that's probably true in other less developed countries in ASEAN. So we have to solve that problem, and that can be solved partly by the ability of internet companies to open the credit facilities for them to borrow cell phones or even appliances and that sort of thing. So the next thing to address is that how do you get your people to adapt to the internet, to use not cash, but digital payments, either the card or the phone as a wallet. As I said, when you give somebody who doesn't have a bank account or a credit card, the first thing he'll ask about the plastic is, what do I do with this? But everybody in this country, there are 117 million mobile subscribers in this country. As far as I know, only 104 million people. So everybody knows how to load the phone. So it's just a matter of making your phone the wallet. By loading on your phone, not only what you need to communicate, but also what you need to pay for the Jollibees or your Meralco bills or what other payment transactions are needed. Because within our own group, for example, there are payment occasions that we can use to move people out of issuing checks or paying by way of cash, which people still do. That's why Meralco, for example, maintained a network of buy-in centers, physical bricks and mortars, where people go to. And that's been a habit ingrained in our people. We have to break that so that the issue of digital transformation can happen nationwide. And my last point relates to financial inclusion. A lot of our people don't have access to money. We must be able to break that logjam. That financial inclusion is a very important point, which the Banco Central is preaching about and encouraging internet companies to allow lending facilities. I was telling Oto-san here that when I was in Tokyo, certain Japanese companies want to lend in the Philippines. So I thought they were crazy because they have yen, they don't have pesos. But if they want to come here and lend, by all means, we will give them the platforms and the infrastructure necessary to provide more money to our people, on a nationwide basis. And that's what this whole thing is all about. At the end of the day, we in the internet world should be judged not by the money we make, the profits we make, but if we could say that so many years from today, we can say we have improved the lives of our people, we have less poor people by way of the internet, then I think we've done a good job.
Thank you very much. With that, we have to wrap up here. I'm aware you have a bunch of questions to the panelists, but please catch them in the reception and ask questions individually. Thank you very much for everybody. With that, give a big hand again for all the panelists. Thank you very much.